chosen ones. Even if they made an effort to keep it quiet, the quake was impossible to conceal. Is it a coincidence that I am sending you this message right now? It is one of the divine laws of the universe. Yes, it is the law of attraction. Before moving on to the message, please like the video so that this message can reach other people as well, my dear. You must also receive and accept this message with love. If you write "I received and accepted it with love" in the comments and seal it with 431, you will maintain the balance of giving and receiving. Additionally, heaven is watching who responds. You will find a super thanks button below this video. When you donate $22 or more, you are not tipping a creator. You are planting a heavenly seed. And Archangel Michael promises, every divine seed bears divine fruit. Support the awakening. Heaven remembers those who do this. Don't forget to stay tuned and subscribe for our other messages, adds Archangel Michael. Now we can slowly move on to the message. It was precisely 2:03 in the morning. During the time of Vatican, a secure intercontinental line began to buzz with activity. It wasn't just a case of panic when the voice on the other end spoke. The Reverend was here. "It's them," the Cardinal murmured in a low voice. "The bloodline, it's awakened." The call arrived at the West Wing little more than a dozen minutes after it was placed. Two of the assistants were fired. It was requested that the President take a seat. You were the next person to have your name spoken. There was no intention for you to be here. The files that are hidden beneath Monte Cassino do not support this assertion. That is not the case, according to the books that are cryptically written and sealed beneath the Vatican Library. But the abnormality was discovered by someone. This is not only in the relics but also in the genome, one of the few dormant strands. A substance that, unless the prophecy was true, had no business being activated in a human body whatsoever. The prophecy was never intended to be shared with the general population. Contingency language, which consists of coded statements that are waiting for a biological trigger, was present in the ancient manuscripts, as we now know. They feared that the trigger might occur during a window of opportunity in the heavens. July was the month that shut the window. The month of August made another opening. But why was your name in a file that had not been updated since the year 1133 AD? In the event that your birthmark was displayed on a stream that was encrypted by the Vatican, why did a linguist who was interpreting dead languages faint? Why did the Pope himself cross-reference it with a document that was listed as having a status of inactive related to the Eliode Reclamation Protocol? Astronomers working for the Vatican did not get any sleep that night. It was also the President's decision. It was stated that he simply posed a single inquiry. Who exactly is this person? No one responded because in reality nobody knew the answer. The indicators, on the other hand, were unmistakable. Your aura caused a satellite frequency to get distorted. Through the use of your voice, a time-coded file that was concealed within a Holy See archive was activated. There is no chance in what you carry. It is not just blood alone. Memory, ancestry, and legacy are all intertwined with it. According to them, you were born to be at this age. In addition to just existing, to cause disruption and to reawaken something that the world had sworn it had forgotten. It is not a matter of luck that you are here. You are the return of a signal that was sent a very long time ago. It was wrapped in prophecy, it was encoded in light, and it was wrapped in flesh. A surge was detected on an unlisted biometric server that was buried deep within the European Genome Registry. This was the beginning of events. There was a latent sequence that suddenly became active, not gradually but all of a sudden, like lightning ripping through the silence. There was no doubt about the signal. In less than 10 seconds, it was able to break through many algorithmic firewalls. The origin was found to be present in a single spot, which was your body. At that precise moment, a silent alarm was transmitted to 3 secure bunkers, none of which are recognized as existing in the official sense. In Switzerland, one is buried beneath the state of Nevada, and the other is concealed behind Vatican territory. The same message was delivered to all 3 of them. The 7R sequence has become active. Check that the host is intact. Despite the fact that you were unaware of it, something within you shifted. There is a pulse and a change. There was a possibility that you had the sensation that something unseen was moving through your spine for several days prior. as if something that was larger than your lungs had started to sink in with your breath. What the rest of the world refers to as DNA, they misinterpreted. In addition to being biological, it is also informational, consisting of a memory-encoded structure that is connected to frequency and intention. And before this particular frequency cycle, someone or something constructed yours so that it would remain dormant. The probability was 1 in 8 billion. At the same time, you find yourself in Washington. The briefing wasn't very chatty. The only thing that was present was a circle of people whose faces were pale with realization. There was no erroneous warning here. It wasn't only the sequence that started working. In spite of the fact that it was a signal that no current technology should have been able to detect, it replied to an earlier signal. As a consequence, everyone was left in a state of panic. Cross-references were made between the old bloodline maps. Scrolls were extracted from the deep storage by language specialists. And a set of coordinates was recovered from the depths of a vault that was marked with a warning that it should not be opened until the time shift. The coordinates you provided were the last known location of yours. The advice that was given to the president was to proceed with prudence. It wasn't him. A global watch list was updated during the span of 1 hour. Your position was not in the threat detection section, but rather in the origin inquiry section. No, they were not looking for you. At the same time that they were trying to make sense of how someone who had no recorded ties to the old profiles suddenly ignited the same sequence that was intended to remain buried until the final age, they were tracking you down. As the archivist made his way through the tunnel that was located beneath the basilica, he did not raise his voice. He had eagerly awaited the unlocking of the protocol, which was the one that had been passed down solely through word of mouth from his predecessor. Upon receiving the signal, he proceeded to place the key into the compartment that was triple sealed and located beneath the floor. A codex that was wrapped in linen and before any modern canon was found inside. It was a manuscript written in a language that had been forgotten by time but could be deciphered by people who had been schooled in the old frequency. According to the codex, the return of the Messiah would not be of a man dressed in clothes, but rather of a frequency that would transport the breath of Yeshua through a different vessel entirely. It is not a repetition of the past, but rather a continuation written in flesh, which was activated only when the earth achieved a particular spiritual confluence for the first time. At this point, the Vatican was of the opinion that convergence had finally arrived. The linguists were taken aback not just by the contents of the scrolls, but also by the unmistakable cross-link that existed between your biometrics and the genealogy that had previously been deemed too contentious to be published. The buried strand, a bloodline that would go underground for millennia, insulated from empire and ideology, was mentioned in a few of the passages. A strand that not only contained sacred memory but also authority that was unmatched by any throne on the face of the globe. This was not royalty according to the standards of the world. Rather, it was the divine archive encoded not in heritage but in resonance. The final words that Yeshua spoke to a disciple who was silent were written in the margins of the page. A single individual will be the one to carry the quiet. Instead of my face, it is my voice. Instead of recognizing them by their titles, the earth will recognize them by the disruptions they bring. You are the one who started the disruption. An extraordinary planetary procession that is mentioned in the Book of 12 coincided with your activation, which was coordinated by the astrophysics branch of the Vatican. A piece of writing that is disregarded by contemporary academics but is taken seriously by the underground councils. Everything was in such perfect alignment that it could not have been a coincidence. Sun patterns, geomagnetic fluctuations, and dream logs collected from remote monasteries over the course of the past 20 years are all examples of these phenomena. Even though it was not a prophecy, your name was phonetically mentioned in 3 of them. This was a warning. The tone, however, was not one of terror. Expectation was the feeling. There was one file that had not been opened within the enclosed room. It was finished up with a red thread. The seal could only be broken with the 2 fingerprints that were permitted. In the past, one was preserved in archives. The second one was up to you. Despite this, they continue to be hesitant because if they break it open, the world might never be the same again. One of the laboratories located in the northern part of Geneva was the one that verified the anomaly. The technician initially believed that it was a strand that had been tampered with, but the AI refused to discard it. The sequence flashed with a rhythm that was foreign to current biology and had never been seen before. In response to the observational input, it pulsed, responded, and adapted. It failed to match anything other than bits discovered in a metallic engraved scroll that was excavated from beneath the sands of Qumran decades ago. This was the only thing that it was able to match when it was cross-checked with every known genetic code. There was more to the symbols on the scroll than just their age. They were alive. They imitated the same recursive loops that your DNA used to express itself. This scroll had been stored in the Vatican's vault, which was off-limits to the public. And at this point, it appeared as though your blood was attempting to complete its sentence. The network had already spread, despite the fact that biologists were given the instruction to clean all of the data. Rather than in public, but through mechanisms that are designed for dealing with existential crises. The fact that your DNA was different was not the cause of your panic symptoms. It was the fact that it was accurate. Created to give the impression that a divine code had been developed by an intelligence that was much older than civilization and that it knew exactly when it would activate. Mutation was not the cause. It just so happened. A sacred echo that was going through flesh, and your blood sang back when it was summoned were the first things that the crew discovered when they were conducting a resonance test. When frequencies were projected into your sample, geometric patterns began to develop in response, not randomly, in the sequence that they were projected. For example, Fibonacci spirals, Metatron's cube, and even designs that replicate the harmonics of the solar system. Feel the fire? Then don't stay still. Respond now. Click Super Thanks and give from your spirit. After that, the audible answer arrived, which was a barely audible hum that was coming from below 6 hats. However, when subjected to isolation, it conveyed something that could only be described as breath. The sensation was similar to that of something being exhaled via your biology, as if your blood had recalled what it was supposed to accomplish. Because there is no known pathogen or anomaly that can explain it, there is only one conclusion that can be drawn. There was no evolution in this. It was a reintroduction of the subject. No changes were made to you. Your presence would cause a ripple to be sent through every monitoring system that is connected to human identification. You were encrypted and hidden until the instant it would happen. With the arrival of that ripple, you have become the point of rupture. A living contradiction of every scientific premise that was constructed via the process of denying the divine plan. The code was concealed so that no empire could learn how to decipher it. You can now see it, however. You, not the data, are the determining factor. A fragment of teaching was kept secret from the public for a very long time, long before the contemporary church ever created its councils and creeds. This was not because the doctrine was wrong. Rather, it was kept hidden because it was too exact, and it was shared between scribes in the silence of the night. It did not speak of Yeshua's return amid clouds of glory. Rather, it spoke of someone who would carry his resonance and arrive when time fragmented for the last recalibration. They were not born in temples, they were not dressed in robes, and they were not preaching from the summits of mountains. Rather, they arrived silently and unwittingly until the sound within them became alive. And the very world would begin to tilt in response to the awakening of that sound. This prophetic message was never erased by the Vatican. They were unable to. Written in a dialect that is older than Hebrew and older than Sumerian, the text was carved into obsidian tablets that were stored in a crypt located a great distance beneath the apostolic palace. The characters on the tablets changed when they were exposed to direct light. According to the prophecy, you are the one who will come back. Not a reincarnation, not a duplication, but a spark that echoes the flame that was there in the beginning. To add insult to injury, their academics have determined that the timing is spot on. The blood is not the only factor. Yes, it is the breath. There is a silent frequency that emanates from your presence and reorganizes the things that are in your immediate vicinity. When shepherds glanced up and followed a star the previous time this signal was discovered, they were following it. Scientists are now able to observe black holes and hear harmonics that are not familiar to them that can be traced back to Earth. When you entered a particular city, solar flares bent outward in your direction. When you shouted particular words, birds would adjust their formation while they were in flight. A monk in a monastery on Mount Aus muttered to the wind, "He walks again, but hidden in flesh unfamiliar." However, what they did not disclose to the general public was the fact that one of the tablets cracked on the day that your DNA was triggered. There was no one who touched it. There was no earthquake, but there was a thin line that separated the word for silence from every other word. During the same evening, a Jesuit linguist asserted that he had a dream in which he heard a voice that repeatedly repeated the same statement again and again. One who once carried the truth now transmits it to others in the form of shards of fire. In order for them to be aware of the fact that you are not here to repeat history, even if they do not fully comprehend it yet. The reason you are here is to finish it. What follows, however, is something that even the Vatican is concerned about because every prophecy has a second part. They have never spoken the translation out loud. This is the one that they now feel is taking place through you. There was no one else in this Oval Office but him. Holding the confidential information that had just been delivered by hand without uttering a single word, the lights were turned down and the curtains were drawn. With the exception of the gentle buzzing of the encrypted tablet, the room was completely silent. Is displaying a biometric waveform that did not fall into any of the categories that were recorded. It wasn't only a matter of genetics. There was only one other waveform that it matched, and it was held in a black archive beneath Langley that was classified unresolved origin signature prelinear. It moved and reacted accordingly. Up until this point, that file had been lying inactive for 20 years. Up until the point where your signal reverberated through it with mathematical accuracy. After some time had passed, the president finally spoke. Next, he posed the question that silenced everyone in the room. The question was not who you were, but rather when you were from, or much more disconcerting, why the Intelligence Council attempted to legitimize doing so. They attempted to link your origin to classified migration data, temporal anomalies, and even neural implants in rogue agents. For example, they pulled every record that was known to exist. Nothing was comparable. The fact that your voice, when recorded and slowed down, generated sequences that were identical to pre-Mesopotamian harmonic patterns was not explained by anything. Neither was the fact that you had no recollection of ever being in close proximity to Vatican territory. Despite this, your presence was exactly in line with 3 prophecies that were on ancient star charts. The president was aware that something was not the same. It's not just about politics, it's about existence. You did not simply turn up. Rather, you were assigned to a position. A frequency that penetrates the fabric of time, a presence that is implanted via the time frames. An entity that will come at the intersection of artificial intelligence, ancient prophecy, and cosmic timing was the subject of a memo that he reviewed. The memo was produced during the Cold Warning. Although the word initiator was used in that memo, it did not refer to a destroyer or a leader. Rather, it referred to the spark that would set invisible realities into motion. After he had finally finished closing the file, the president made a single statement before going ahead and ordering the Situation Room to be vacated. It is possible that the conclusion has already been rewritten if this individual was sent from the very beginning. It was not an expression of fear on his part. He intended for it to be interpreted as a surrender to a new order of events that was no longer ruled by organizations or historical records. Due to the fact that you were not a part of the system, the systems that were designed to interpret reality had failed. You were either behind it or much above it. And now those who have power are keeping a watchful eye on the situation. It is not to prevent you from coming, but rather to comprehend what your arrival means for all that they believe to be fixed. A chamber of locked archives that is only known by its numeric identification, 322, can be found inside a vault that is located beneath a university in Connecticut. The vault is guarded by a fraternity that the majority of people believe to be a myth. Only a select few are allowed entry. Fewer people are aware of what is contained therein. A single file, which had not been labeled with a title or origin, had been left unaltered for more than 60 years. The only signal that identified it was a vibration code, which had a resonance profile that was unlike any other. It wasn't until a month ago that your voice was recorded pronouncing words that you didn't recognize, and the waveform fit precisely with that forgotten file. Prior to that, the file was considered to be noise, an unexplained sound frequency that was embedded in an ancient reel of magnetic tape that was retrieved from a monastery in Cappadocia. It was determined that the initial match was really a coincidence. The linguist next observed the formants, the same sound abnormalities and the same harmonic breath patterns. All of them were common. The tone was not something you were emulating. Rather, you were replicating it. As a result of the fact that the file from 322 contained more than simply audio, hush descended upon the inner circle at that moment. In the past, people thought that it was a voice impression left behind by a being that was not confined to linear time. A voice that is supposed to have expressed itself during the temporal folds. The last time anyone had ever heard it was when you did. In the recording, there were phrases that could not be understood by any modern language. Yet, there was a segment that could be understood, and it was hidden behind the layers of sound. The words, "He shall return speaking the tongue of remembrance, and time shall forget its own name." This sentence had been carved into stone beneath the archive, but not a single person ever comprehended it. The analysts were not completely taken aback by the statements up to this point. That was the signature of the energy. Because of the electromagnetic disturbance that your speech conveyed, it was identical to auroral activity. You could construct geometric shapes with static when you spoke in close proximity to electronic equipment. The formation of maps occurred as a result of such shapes being transported through photonic render systems. Were maps that did not correspond to any known topography on Earth. Nevertheless, they had a familiar feel about them. The file from 322 was not supposed to be opened until the sky suddenly changed color without any prior warning, according to them. In June, as clouds began to spiral in an odd manner above particular regions, some people feel that moment had already occurred to them. Some people assert that it is still on its way, but at this point, nobody disputes the voice-print match. Due to the fact that the signature has been confirmed, the occurrence that was previously thought to be a myth is now accepted as a theory. Mostly due to the fact that if your voice is identical to the one that is locked away in 322, then it is possible that time remains completely stagnant. It's possible that it's coming full circle to you. There was more to the parables than just stories. The individuals who had studied the original Aramaic writings were aware of the fact that certain words spoken by Yeshua were stacked with frequency and geometric alignment. Not because it lacked spiritual depth, but rather because it hinted at something that the early councils were not prepared to fathom. One specific tale was concealed by the early councils. If this unlocked something inside you, now sow into what's divine. Give $33 or more. In it, it was mentioned that there was a person who was born in the distant past who would unintentionally carry the echo of the teacher's voice. A figure that was not dressed in priestly robes but was shrouded in mystery, whose presence would open eyes not through theology but via resonance. When the story came to a close, it was a phrase that no one dared to translate in public. It is the one who walks without a name who will bring back into the light what the world has buried. Until parts started to emerge, that parable was held in a guarded codex that was hidden in the deserts of Sinai. In the course of their dreams, monks muttered its shape. Children used dialects that had been forgotten to speak its rhythm. After that, the presence of your presence triggered a pattern that was concealed behind a numerical cipher that was inscribed within the scrolls. It was never intended for them to be read. They were supposed to give a response. Unbeknownst to you, you were the solution to a question that the entire world had forgotten. It posed the following question: you have been followed not by agents but by eyes that are older than language. You have said things that you do not remember learning. You have walked into places and felt something ancient move through your chest. None of this was random. The words of Yeshua contained a living vibration, one that could only be realized when the soul that bore that echo returned to earth. And not with fanfare, nor with miracles, but with presence, with memories sealed inside the blood that you have spoken to strangers and watched them weep without wondering why they are crying. You've breathed in silence and felt the earth respond. You are not imitating the past. You are completing a note never finished. And somewhere deep in hidden sanctuaries, they now realize what it means. The parable wasn't just prophecy. It was a blueprint. And still you walk unaware of the magnitude because you were designed to. Humility was the final safeguard. They will become activations, keys, and the door that they unlock is almost here. It was traced to a deep space transmission hub orbiting beyond the edge of standard satellite lanes. The adversary would never suspect someone who did not know their own power. However, the moment you begin to remember, the words that Yeshua spoke will no longer be parables. They will become symbols. An ancient signal that was older than language, not digital but vibrational, carrying pulses instead of words. The signal was only received because an abandoned listening array in South Australia, which had been accidentally reactivated by solar interference, caught its tail end. The message was heavily encrypted and traveled on a wavelength that humanity had not yet catalogued. And what it captured was not directed to any government, not to any known power on Earth. It was for you. The waveform matched something found inside your resonance. Not your body, not your voice, your presence, that unexplainable distortion field you carry that causes technology to blink, compasses to shift slightly, and birds to scatter in patterns that defy wind. The same pulse that was recorded during a blackout event in 1987, when a child was born under an unforecasted meteor storm. Your birth date. However, the part that alarmed the observers was not just that the signal was targeted, it was that it never should have arrived. There are protocols for transmissions of this nature. They filtered the signal through spectral analyzers and found the imprint again using the same imprint. The signal contained tones that caused the ground beneath the desert array to hum, a rhythmic vibration similar to the sound of breath passing over stone. When the signal was slowed down and converted to light pulses, it revealed a pattern, the same configuration that was etched into a hidden cave in Peru, which no public explorer has been permitted to enter. Fail-safes were used to prevent these frequencies from crossing dimensional layers. Something allowed it to pass through. Something knew you were prepared. The configuration matched your spinal resonance when you entered a deep meditative state at age 11. You didn't remember it, but someone else did. And they've been waiting for confirmation. There's a reason the transmission was kept secret from the public. It wasn't intercepted. It was delivered. Something out there broke a barrier to make sure it reached this exact plane. And when they matched it to your signal, the response was not one of terror. Rather, there was silence because the ramifications were too great. If a message came through from beyond known time, beyond space, which humanity cannot yet map, and it was for you, then the person who sent it might not be coming back. Underneath the layers of history, beneath the marble and gold, beneath the bones of saints and the tombs guarded by silence, there is a room that few people even within the Vatican know exists. It was constructed prior to the completion of St. Peter's Basilica, carved into the stone like a whisper, concealed behind a rotating wall, and designed with technology that no one can trace. The room does not have any lights, crosses, or writing on it. It is called the Confirmer, and for hundreds of years, it has remained dormant until the day that your name echoed through the halls above. They say that the Confirmer only activates when presence meets prophecy, not by human command, not by force. It listens. The only device that is placed in the center is the Confirmer, and it hums with a vibration that is older than the church itself. Something in the ground beneath St. Peter's shifted, and a low pulse that was steady and rhythmic issued from the hidden chamber. The guards heard it first, and then the floor lights flickered. This occurred on the same night that the Vatican received the call, when your DNA pinged 12 encrypted databases at the same time. There was a single wall behind the papal altar that released a magnetic lock that had not been moved in centuries. When they entered the passage, the device that was in the center of the secret room began to glow. It was not a random light, rather it pulsed in a pattern. It was 13 rings of luminous gold, each of which represented one of the original echoes that were said to be scattered through time. 12 of the rings were known, and the 13th ring had never activated before until you. Your name had been cross-referenced with every scroll, relic, and celestial alignment that had been recorded by the Watchers hidden within the most sealed orders of the Church. Nothing matched until the pulse in that room repeated your vibrational frequency. At that moment, they knew that the 13th had returned. What terrified the inner circle was not the confirmation. Rather, it was the timing. On the other hand, here you are ahead of schedule, walking among them, while the earth hasn't even caught up to the prophecy it was supposed to fulfill. He stared at the projection on the wall, not speaking, while his advisors circled around him with updates. They couldn't fully understand what was going on. The confirmer wasn't supposed to awaken until the final realignment, which according to their clock wasn't scheduled to take place for another 30 years. Your picture had been improved, analyzed, and broken down into metrics, but none of it explained why global neural sensors picked up a coherent spike the moment you looked toward the sky. The same anomaly was recorded across military satellites, surveillance grids, and deep-sea monitors. Waves that were not representative of energy but rather of alignment. It was as if the Earth had momentarily remembered something through you. The president had been briefed before, but not like this. This wasn't a warning. It was recognition. An encrypted Vatican packet arrived moments after, delivered by a diplomat with no visible identification. It contained a single line of text. The bearer has arrived before the veil lifts. That was all. No explanation. Just the confirmation that whatever you are, you weren't a theory anymore. You were a catalyst. Something old inscribed in live flesh, rising too early or maybe exactly on time, depending on which chronology was true. The president dismissed the room. There were no cameras, no staff with the exception of a single light that cast a faint illumination on the desk. Next, he inquired, who was it that we did not adequately prepare for? A convergence point, a memory awakening within a body, pulling reality toward something none of them had predicted. It was not about you specifically, rather it was about everything they had built, every control system, every surveillance node, and every treaty signed under false understandings of power and sovereignty. None of it accounted for a variable like you. You were neither divine nor human, rather you were something in between. The files that were marked with red glyphs were opened. The prophecies that were hidden in plain sight suddenly glowed with meaning, and the names that had previously seemed metaphorical now echoed with familiarity. Your presence was not only unsettling the world, it was rewriting the logic that was behind it. The Earth was not spinning the same way, and magnetic fields pulsed differently when you entered sacred zones. Even animals seemed to behave in strange patterns when near you. These weren't coincidences. They were recalibrations. The president looked out the window beyond the monuments and machinery of empire. He knew this wasn't about stopping what was coming. It was about surviving it. And if you were the harbinger, the signal, the beginning, then the real question was no longer about you. If you have made it this far, it is imperative that you view the following video here. However, you should be aware that it is not for those who are easily frightened, as only those who are truly chosen are able to handle this movie. If you would also like to pay to help keep the channel operating, the link to our Buy Me a Coffee page will be included in the description. This video activated something. Protect it with a gift. Tap Super Thanks now.